Additionally, when it comes to these organizations and the macroeconomic policies that the reforms, the macroeconomic policies that they recommend, it often something to note. These changes in macroeconomic policy often coincides with the political cycle. And you'll see what I mean. Most governments are loath to make big changes to their macroeconomic policy that may adversely affect their populations right before an election, because it means that if it is you go to the IMF, which is the lender of last resort, if you go to them and they recommend austerity measures, and you do this before an election, it usually means that the government of the day who has done this is going to lose that election. So they don't like to go to the IMF before an election. Now, while it is the use of the Article 4 consultation is great to monitor states' activities when it comes to financing and development, well, how they're using their money, so that they don't end up in problems and contribute to possible financial crises or default on their loans. The information gathering is good, yes, but sometimes, because you're dealing with people, what we need to understand is if a politician uses this to better their chances of being re-elected, then it's not serving the purpose it's supposed to serve. But be that as it may, these organizations have also been accused of, these two organizations in fact, have also been accused of doing anything to promote the neoliberal agenda, right? So according to, I believe his name was Robin Broad, and even Joseph Stiglitz, a former head of the World Bank, he criticized the bank's policies, and it was documented in an early 2003 article by Robin Broad, and he made mention of the fact that sometimes economists who promote alternative approaches to development in the World Bank, if it doesn't resonate with the bank and the leaders of the fund, they're going to bury the research. So persons who are more in line with these policies that recommend privatization, deregulation, de-risking, cutting public expenditure, all of this, free trade, economic liberalization, those economists who are more in line with that, their work gets promoted. They get the articles being broadcast in The Economist and institutions like this. But if it's not, your research is just going to sit down there and you are going to have to do the work yourself. And if it is you decide to ask, well, why isn't my stuff being promoted? You just don't get an answer. And no response is a response, folks. Now, that is not to say that they don't do some good. And they can also do some sort of they do have some sort of influence in maintaining peace in this way, because remember, monetary flows is a resource and most people go to war over resources. So there was a concern recently expressed by a US congressman that the special drawing rights of certain states can be accessed to fund conflict, given the state of the world right now with the Russian-Ukraine conflict. And while this is a valid concern, because as an ultimate last resort, when states have been sanctioned and they cannot borrow, no other institution is willing to lend them money, it's often the IMF who is the lender of last resort. And even if it is you have exhausted your options in borrowing within the IMF, you can rely on your special drawing rights to borrow against. However, with regard to the congressman's concern that these special drawing rights are being used by Russia to fund their conflict with Ukraine, this is unfounded, because the IMF has blocked the use of those special drawing rights to fund that conflict, although they did open it up during the pandemic because states needed money to fund, to finance PPE and buy vaccines and care for their population, right? So these are things that are all being influenced by a wholly international organization. So next time we meet, we'll talk about the role of the United Nations in global governance and development.